The essence of life, as I have lived it, is change. And one of the first things that struck me as I walked into this room today is that I recalled a time probably 30, 40 years ago when we used to give speeches and talks about orgonomy at NYU. Now, I forget how frequently we did it, whether it was once a week or once a month. I do remember that a room almost as large as this was filled. And I walk into this room and it's hardly filled. And I think, what the hell has happened? Why is this room not more full than the old rooms at NYU were? And the fact is that at that time, Reich was hot. And the village was full of Reich, Greenwich Village, that is. Intellectuals talked about Reich. Reich was a hot subject. And today, Reich is spoken of.
Hold it just a little further away from your mouth, because it's a little fuzzy.
By relatively few intellectuals. Very few people are applying to become therapists in psychiatric orgotherapy. The scene is totally different. Now, it doesn't worry me particularly because I can remember many years ago when the decline was already in progress, and I had a speaking engagement in Montevideo. And the opening session was held in a room not dissimilar from the Academy of Music, with one balcony after another. And on opening night, the City Hall was filled in Montevideo, which was amazing to me. And as I've spoken at various places around the world, I know that, for example, there is immense popularity of Reich in Finland and in Spain, so that I think that the fact that we are few is simply a phase. One thing I think is that the presence of Dr. Strick's book is going to start a little fuss, and perhaps our numbers will increase again. I want to talk about something that I can't get out of my mind, which is a book review written by the head of psychiatry at Columbia University called Shrink. And I have not read the book. I've only read the book review in the New York Times. The author, the thesis of the book is that psychiatry is finally awakening from a time almost of stupor. He thinks that we spent a half century listening to Freud whom he thinks is full of empty talk. And finally, we have arrived at a time of scientific psychiatry, that is, medicine. Included in his review is a brief section on Reich, whom he includes in a section devoted to fakes, magicians, quacks, and he describes Reichian therapy thus. He said, people put rubber tubes around their throats and squeeze into organ accumulators for various sensations. Now that's his description of psychiatric organ therapy. It's wild, and it's, you know, the fantasy of a sick adolescent. And I can't get it out of my mind. The fact that the head of psychiatry at Columbia University, first of all, has such a fantastic imagination to think that his description describes psychiatric organ therapy, but secondly, to have the chutzpah to put Freud down so easily, who has awakened the lives and the minds of people all over the world, dismiss him as easily as he does, can't help but make me think of this guy standing at the judgment of Copernicus or Galileo or Bruno and yelling, "Burn 'em! Burn 'em!" Because that's essentially the kind of character type who would write such a book, which is probably a little off the subject, but it's what moves me at this time. I think that's all I want to say now.
What's even more, some of you might have seen the review, what's even more upsetting, I mean that's bad enough, but that the New York Times, which was responsible to do some fact checking and could have, with no problem at all, established that whether they agreed with Reich's work or not, none of the facts stated in the book or in the review had any basis in fact. That doesn't mean they had to endorse Reich. It was just, I mean, in all my personal, I agree with, I think Dr. Herskowitz upset about this is absolutely right. In all my experience of the put-downs and misconceptions and lies about Reich and orgonomy, this one was wild. It wasn't just a misrepresentation or a disagreement. It was pure fantasy, and this is what you're often dealing with.
Kevin, you got to jump in? It's in the book. It's not just in the review, because there are a few pages of the book posted on the Amazon site, and you can see that this guy does say this thing about the rubber tube. I think where he got it was from one of the images that the FDA posted. And but regardless, it's total crap. But what's significant is that though a number of us have written letters, well, we'll see. Tomorrow's paper may show it.